Hi, this is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee, and for today's video we're going to be taking a quick look at the Alinco DJ-VX50. It's a radio I've been asked about quite a few times. I've owned this radio for a couple of years. If it hasn't been a couple of years, it's pretty close to that. I got it right after it first came out. And like I said, I have been continually asked what my opinion is on this, so I thought, okay, now's a good time to do the review. Now, the reasons that people are asking about it, and there's at least three that I'm aware of. The first of which is that it's the kind of radio that I talk about here. It's a dual band analog HT with some weather protection designed for outdoor use. So yeah, it's definitely a good fit for this channel. The next reason, of course, would be that unlike other Chinese radio brands, and the DJ-VX50 does come from China, but unlike brands such as Redivus, TYT, Baofeng, that you tend to buy on Amazon or eBay, the DJ-VX50 is actually offered in the product selection of a number of reputable mainstream amateur radio suppliers such as Ham Radio Outlet, Gigaparts, DX Engineering. So when you see a radio being sold by those guys, there's a certain endorsement of quality that goes with that because they tend not to sell junk gear. So when people see them being sold there, it draws some attention. But I believe the main reason that people are asking about this is because I talk about the Yaesu FT65 as much as I do. The FT65 is a very popular radio. It's very popular with me. I like the radio a lot, more and more with each passing day, actually. And the Alinco DJ-VX50 compares very closely in terms of price and specifications to the FT65. And in fact, in some ways, does a few things a little better than the FT65 does. So it's definitely worthy of a direct comparison, which is what I'm going to do in this video. However, before I get to that, I need to mention something, and I will get to this information towards the end of the video. But when it comes to the DJ-VX50, there are a couple of things about this radio that are not particularly great. It doesn't actually have anything to do with the actual performance of the radio. It has to do with maintaining and programming the radio. There's some hidden costs that are going to be involved if you want to use your computer to program this radio. And like I said, I'll get to that towards the end, but it's something you should know, and it'll allow you to make a more informed buying decision. But otherwise, it's not a bad little radio. So without further ado, let's get to the comparison. In terms of size, they obviously compare very closely. The Alinco's a little bit wider. The Yaesu's just a little bit taller, but they are in fact very similar in size. Both radios, as I mentioned before, are analog dual band HTs. They operate in the 2 meter, 70 centimeter range. Transmit and receive range is pretty much identical. In terms of available memory channels, both are 200 channel radios. Now, one thing that the FT65 does better than the VX50 is the FT65 allows you to allocate those memory channels and organize them into memory banks to make your radio run a little more efficiently. I use banks a lot. Unfortunately, the VX50 does not do memory banks as far as I can tell. There's nothing in the manual, there's nothing in the menu, and when it comes to the CPS system, that's still an unknown for me. So I'll get to that again towards the end of the video. So I'm gonna give the tilt to the FT65 in that regard. But the next feature that it's actually something I don't particularly care for on the FT65 is that in order to change the channel on the radio, if you're carrying it in a pouch, you need to pull it out and you need to use the up-down arrow keys to change channels. Now, something that the Alinco has incorporated, and I like this a heck of a lot, I really do have a preference towards having separate volume and channel control knobs located at the top of the radio. It's something that I whinge on about quite a bit, but it is a very important factor for me. And Alinco has done a tremendous job with this. Not only do you have separate channel and volume control knobs, the knobs are actually different in size. The volume knob is shorter and fatter. The channel knob is thinner and taller, so that you have a tactile reference between the two. I thought that's an interesting piece of engineering. Additionally, at the top of the knob, they actually put on there the abbreviations for volume and channel. Again, attention to detail that I like. It shows that they're putting some thought into their product. Now, both, of course, feature a little built-up area on the side to protect that outer knob, so that's same. Um, Now, getting to other specifications on the front panel, obviously the FT65 has a few more keys than the Alinco has. Now, mainly what we're talking about here is the P1, 2, 3, and 4 keys, which are pre-programmable keys that you can set up, because there's not a heck of a lot of other keys that are programmed to perform a function. However, I will say on the VX50, if you press the function button and you press a number of these keys, for instance, you press function and scan, it'll scan. You press function and skip, it'll skip the memory channel. You press function and delete, it'll delete the channel. You press function and set, and it'll actually get you into the programming menu. So in actuality, a lot of the stuff that I would have set up as hotkeys are already kind of done anyway. So I'm going to call that an even split. The display is larger on the Alinco, and the Alinco does give you dual display. The FT65, if you go into the radio settings menu, you can set up what looks like a dual display, but it's actually not. It only actually works in VFO, and even then it doesn't work all that well. So really, the FT65, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't have actual dual display. But the Alinco does. So you have a primary and a secondary channel, and all you simply do is press the MS key, and it'll bring that bottom channel up or put it right back on the bottom again. So good call there, and very similar to what you might be used to with the AB button on a Baofeng. So I call that a little bit superior. So, looking good, looking good. Now, let's talk about weather protection. When it comes to weather protection, the FT65, of course, claims IP54, which means it's good in the rain, but you can't submerge the radio or it's going to let some water in. The VX50 has claimed IP67 weather resistance, which is submersible to a depth of 1 meter for 30 minutes with no water intrusion. Now, when it comes to a Chinese radio, I always view that with a certain amount of skepticism. And there is another radio channel, Ham Radio Dude, has actually done a dunk test on this radio. And let's just say it's mostly IP67. And in reality, when it comes to IP67, all I'm looking for is if I happen to drop a radio into a puddle, or if I take a prone position in some mud, that I'm not going to have water get into the radio. I'm not looking to sit up to my neck in water for 29 minutes and 58 seconds and jump out of the creek and start making contacts. I don't think that's practical, and it's kind of goofy, but I just mainly want to make sure that it'll stand up to heavy rain and it'll stand up to a short dunk, and I'm pretty confident the Alinco DJ-VX50 will do that. So on to other comparisons. Going to that weather protection, of course, the FT65, of course, has, and I keep getting called on this. I mentioned I thought it was a proprietary plug. I do know that this is a Motorola M-type plug that goes there. That has been probably the thing that's been mentioned most in the comments section. I'm aware of it. The Alinco does use a typical K plug, and it's covered with a sealed port. Now, once you take this cover off and you plug a speaker mic into this, don't expect it to be IP67 beyond that point. IP54 at best, because it is not a sealed connection at the mic, at least not to IP67 specifications. Now, moving to the back of the radio, belt clips, definite nod to the FT65. It's got a pretty badass belt clip on it. The one on the VX50 is ho-hum. It's stamped sheet metal. It's a little flimsy. At least the pin is staked on the other side, unlike another radio company I'm aware of that just stuffs a pin in there and hopes it stays in place, and most of the time it doesn't, it falls out. But it is not really all that robust. I tend to run radios in pouches, so belt clips aren't terribly important to me, but to some folks they are. Now, moving to the PTT side, of course, the FT65 has the trigger. I like this, some people don't, I get it. And very similar in terms of having your squelch adjustment and your Monty buttons. So real similar arrangement there. And then moving back to the front of the radio, you'll notice with the antenna, both radios feature a Nagoya NA701. That is not stock. Both radios feature factory antennas that are not terrific. In fact, the antenna I've been using to gesture at these radios is the factory antenna for the VX50, which looks very, very similar to the factory antenna for a Baofeng UV5R. They're not identical. They're not the same antenna, but they are interchangeable. And neither one of them is worth a darn. So, I mean, they'll get the job done, but you will definitely see an improvement in terms of signal quality on receive and send as soon as you upgrade to something like this antenna. And it doesn't have to be a Nagoya and A701. Diamond and Comet both make some pretty decent antennas, but beyond that, those are pretty much the only three that I use. I'm trying to think if there's anything I really need to mention at this point. Like I say, very similar in operation, but again, the Alinco does actually bring a couple of things to the table that the FT65 doesn't. So it's given it a run for its money as far as I'm concerned. I still kind of like the FT65 a little bit more. Just I think there's a brand thing involved with that. But here's the thing that is probably going to sour the milk just a little bit, because I'm kind of done talking. Oh, before I get to it, let's talk about batteries real fast, because I blazed right by the battery. I'm sorry about that. Of course, the FT65 is featuring that really super nice extended battery. I am intensely happy with this battery. It's good stuff. But the DJ-VX50 has an excellent factory battery, 1800 milliamp. So it's got a decent amount of juice. Now, when I first got the radio, I, of course, charged the battery up, and it does come with a supplied cradle charger. So I charged the battery up. I did the programming. I conducted a net, and I did some monitoring for a couple of days. Got excellent battery life. I have no objections there at all to the battery. It's more than adequate to your needs. But the thing I like is how long this thing will hold a charge, because I put the radio away in frustration over something I'll get to in a moment. And I didn't come back to the radio for about 6 months, but I did put it away fully charged. And when it came back, it had 7.8 volts on it, which is serviceable. That's a serviceable voltage. So long storage time. I charged it again, and I didn't pull it out until recently to do this video. And it is operating off of the charge that I did months and months ago. So, and I believe it's 7.5 volts is what it had. So what's nice about this is it's the kind of radio that you can charge up, throw into a go bag, and be confident that you can pull it out a month or two later and it's going to have a charge on it. Unlike some other radios I can name, Baofeng in particular, their batteries are not all that terrific, and they don't hold their charge as long as I would like, at least. So that's nice. Now, I can say that exactly the same thing about the FT65 battery, both the stock battery and this one here, which this one seems to be the kind of battery you charge on Sunday and use all week. Nice stuff. So, getting back to the kind of the wrap up here, like I said, the VX50 gives the FT65 a good run for its money, but let me talk really quick about the downside of the VX50, and this is something that I didn't know going into it. So when I bought the radio, it did not have, I think I got it from HRO, and there was no programming cable listed in the recommended accessories. So I kind of got the radio thinking, well, maybe they don't list it because it's included and it's just not something that's mentioned in the factory literature. So I got it, and of course there was no programming cable in the box with the radio. So I go back to HRO and look, there's no programming cable. I look around, I could not, after I bought this radio, I could not find an ERW7, which is the cable. I could not find an ERW7 cable anywhere. So I was a little frustrated. So what I did was I went ahead and I programmed this from the front panel, which is, as I said, pretty darn easy. And that's at least one nice thing, is it's going to make you program it from the front panel, but at least it's something that you might already be familiar with. I mentioned it earlier, but you press the function key and you press set, and you are in the programming menu. Use your up and down arrow keys, and if you look here, these are all pretty similar to some stuff you've probably seen before if you've ever messed with a UV5R. In fact, even getting to the color. Now, when you get to a menu selection and you want to effect a change on that, you just use the channel control knob and it'll move through your options. So let's say I want to change in blue, orange, and purple. We're familiar with that one, right? So I want to change everything to blue. I just press the function key again. I press the PTT and I'm out, and I've now changed my display to blue. get back to function, set. I want to get that back to orange again because I just like the orange better. And I press function and I'm good to go. But I move through here, like I said, it's going to be super, super familiar. Except for this. This is something that some of the Baofengs don't do, and you can alphanumerically name your channels from the front panel. So pretty much anything you could do on the computer, you can do at the front panel with this radio, I think, because I still have not been able to lay my hands on a computer programming system for this radio. Now, I know CPS doesn't stand for computer programming. It stands for customer. I think it's customer programming system, but it could stand for any number of things. We in this industry, we tend to steal everything from whatever Motorola calls it, but I consider it to be computer programming system. So there you go. But most radios, if you buy a radio, there are usually a couple of different ways that you can program the radio, because I mentioned I couldn't get a programming cable. Well, you can now. The downside is the damn programming cable is $44 if you want the factory one. Now, when we talk FT65, you're going to spend $28 on a programming cable for that. So they're kind of close, but $44 is still pretty damn steep for a $99 radio to be almost half the price of the radio for a programming cable. That's almost criminal as far as I'm concerned. But so let's say you do get a cable. Either you buy that or you buy an alternative I'll tell you about later, or you make one, because there's some recipes out there for making a programming cable for this radio. So let's say you do come up with some method of connecting your radio to the computer. Once you've done that, how are you going to program the radio? Well, again, if you go to most radios, or the product page for most radios out there on the factory page, you can find a CPS for the radio. Whether it's Yaesu, even Baofeng, you can find all of that stuff and download it directly from the site, and I'm pretty accustomed to doing that. Go to Alinco and you will find, even to this day, you will find nothing for the DJ-VX50. They have nothing listed. I heard on another radio channel that there was a CPS for this floating around out there and you could download it from some dude. That is sketchy. Why doesn't Alinco offer the CPS for this? I just don't know. So next, and really what most people go to first, in all honesty, is they go and see if it's supported by Chirp. And the DJ-VX50 is still not supported by Chirp. And that is a damn shame, because it would really, this radio is going to, I actually believe a large part of the reason why this radio is not as popular as it should be is because it's not supported by Chirp. Because if it's not supported by Chirp and you can't download a CPS from the factory website, you have only one option for programming this radio on your computer, and that's buying the RT Systems programming package. And the crazy thing is, an Alinco factory programming cable is $44. The RT Systems programming package with the software and the programming cable is $48. Okay. And here's another tip. If you want to buy a programming cable, you can get one for just the programming cable, no software. You can get it for $30. So there's your option at this point. What I would love to see, and if anyone has any degree of influence over the people that run Chirp or run Dan Planet or whatever it is, I don't know the people. If anyone does, please, please, please lean on them and say, make something for the Alinco DJ-VX50. Because I think if you had Chirp supporting the radio and you had less expensive programming cables, this radio would rise immediately in popularity, because that's really the only major downside I see about this radio. It is otherwise a damn good little radio, and it's definitely worthy of consideration. But like I say, with the caveat that if you want to program this from the computer, it's going to be a bit of a challenge, and you may end up having to do what I did and program in 198 channels by hand through the front panel. Now, the net result of that, this is one radio I definitely know how to FPP on. So, okay, that I guess that's a benefit. But if I wanted to take this and travel with it, for instance, I wanted to go, because I have everything set up for Tulare County and Kings County, Fresno County, Kern County, that kind of thing. If I now need to go to San Luis Obispo or go up north or something and I want to take this radio, I just can't. It's going to take me a whole day to set up the channels I need for that particular area. So it's a bit of a pain in that regard. But there you go. Like I said, DJ-VX50, good competitor for the FT65. I like them both. I actually do like them both. So I'm hoping to solve the programming cable thing, and hope Chirp kicked in, and that the VX50 has a bright future. So with that, I will bring it to a close. Thank you for listening as usual. It looks like I made my goal of keeping this at 20 minutes. So with that, have a wonderful day. This is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee in Southwest Visalia, California. Have a wonderful day.